Hello, hello, hello. We are live here on Talk Talk Live. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Talk Live. Yes, I have a bit of a more formal apparel tonight because of who we are featuring, but let's get to pleasantries. Welcome back to Talk Talk Live. Thank you very much for joining me. Sorry for the technical difficulties as usual, but thank you for joining in, and thank you for hanging in to Talk Talk Live on ING and YouTube. And yes, hope you're having a great week. Hope you had a good weekend, and yes, well, it's Tuesday anyway, so you should be over the weekend by now anyway, so I'm looking forward to the next one. But nonetheless, we are here to attest to the one named Thomas Sowell. But like, subscribe, comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Thanks very much for some of the people who I saw out there who were telling me about the talk show, and to be fair and frank, yeah, we're growing by leaps and bounds. This is we're catching hell on TikTok. So again, or should I say traction? Traction. We're catching traction on TikTok right now. So again, I thank you for all the people who are liking and subscribing and growing the channel. And yeah, we are promise to put out great work here on Talk Talk Live in the days, weeks, months, and years to come as we make improvements to the channel. And believe me, I'm aware of that. I am behind on things, and I am looking to shore things up. But that hasn't stopped me from me and my drive, and it hasn't stopped me from producing such content as this. And thank you very much for joining me at Talk Talk Live. And let's get into it. Let's get into it tonight. Hope you're enjoying your night. Today was a bit of a snowy day, a bit of winter's last sting here in the city of Toronto. There was a bit of snow everywhere, and I got a parking ticket on the street, so I'm not exactly the best pleased by it. But again, you know, the parking ticket meters got to hold their quota. Lord knows the city need the money. The city need their money from us, so they got to take it any way they can get it. And there it is. Let me get some water here. Just came back from the gym, so I'm a bit parched. But let's get into it, people. Thank you very much for joining me at Talk Talk Live as we explore the one and the only Thomas Sowell. Now, if you're not familiar with Thomas Sowell, he's not exactly a man that that just slips off the tongue like some other political leaders in the black community, especially in black diaspora space, such as Barack Obama, such as Jesse Jackson, such as many others. Jesus Christ, why am I drawing a blank all of a sudden? Jesus. Yes, Al Sharpton. There we go. Such as Al Sharpton. So again, this is not a name that comes to mind when it comes to blackface, because quite simply, he is a conservative, and black known conservatives are few and far between, and quite simply are usually shunned for the most part from the political spotlight. For the most part, if you are black and in the political space, you tend to be more of center left or left of the political spectrum. And Thomas Sowell is not that. He is a man who's very well esteemed in the conservative community, but he's yet to get his full due from the political mainstream, as they say, and it's because of his views are a little bit against what would be considered black politics, quite simply. And, I decided to feature him today. And you know what got me thinking of this? Is when I was at my dad's place of business in the city of Toronto here. And, well, it's a bit north of here, I'm going to say, because he's very, very conservative in keeping that space. But again, my father always had a saying of Thomas Sowell's on his mantelpiece. And I'm always thinking, now, who's this Thomas Sowell? I mean, I did my research on him and did my background on him, and I said, you know what? I should be doing a show on this film, because I know he has a picture of Barack Obama with my cousin when he was campaigning in 2007, before the 2008 campaign. And Lord knows I have an affection and affinity for Barack Obama. But I also do have an affection and affinity for a man named Thomas Sowell. And I just wanted... And I know a lot of people have commented on this, but not a lot of Canadian political leaders, Canadian political... I'm just moving the mic here. Canadian political acolytes would have, or anyone in the African diaspora would have featured Thomas Sowell, because he's not exactly speaking black politics as it is, which tends to be center left, if not further left, on the political spectrum. And I thought tonight would be a good night to introduce those who have not known Thomas Sowell to a certain audience outside of the United States. I think many in the United States know of Thomas Sowell, but yet he doesn't engage in cool politics that tend to win votes, tend to garner popular appeal, like Barack Obama. And even though I have the utmost respect for Barack Obama, let it be known, I'm not one of these conservatives who, well, I'm not exactly conservative. I'm more centrist in my views, but I'm not exactly a centrist who disregards Barack Obama as being the worst president, which we'll get to a little later. But I think more should be known about Thomas Sowell. He's 93 years old. He's been around politics. He's been around conservative conservative talking points, conservative chat for many a year, or I would say for at least 4 to 5 decades, and yet he is not as heralded as Martin Luther King, not as heralded as Colin Powell, not as heralded as Adam Clayton III, and he has been in a sort of a anonymity for a while, but his politics, as things have come up, as Trump has come to the fore, as conservatism has been radicalized, he's been seen as a person of repute within the conservative sphere, and one that black conservatives seem to run to as a place of peace and solace when it comes to such talking points as what we'll discuss tonight. So let's get into tonight and speak on Thomas Sowell. So that was my little blurb to begin. And we're going to get into the browser here. And first we're going to get a background on Thomas Sowell, because not a lot of people know about him. Outside of the United States, outside of the conservative gamut, outside of the conservative sphere, they do know of Thomas Sowell. So let's get to discuss him right now. Now, Thomas Sowell, let's just get into it right here. And shout out to Chanel. How are you? Let's get into Thomas Sowell. Here he is. Thank you, Wikipedia, for this. Courtesy Wikipedia. Fair use, fair use, fair use. Thomas Sowell is an American economist, social philosopher, and political commentator. He's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. Yes, he is which is a conservative think tank. And again, he is a senior fellow there with widely published commentary and books, and as a guest on TV and radio, he has become a well-known voice in the American conservative movement and a prominent black conservative. He was also a recipient of the National Humanities Medal from President George W. Bush in 2002. So he is 93 years old. He was born June 30th on my mother's birthday. No less. He's been born on my mother's birthday in 1930. So he's 93 right now, but he is. But again, his education, he got a BA from Harvard, his MA from Columbia, a PhD from the University of Chicago, and so that we can call him Dr. Sowell if you wish. And again, he is taught also at, let's see of his career here. Yes, he's taught at the University Department of Labor. He's taught at Rutgers, Howard, Cornell, University of Chicago, Brandeis University, University of California, Los Angeles, Urban Institute, American Enterprise Institute, Stanford University, and Stanford University and the Hoover Institution, where he is a senior fellow, and also Amherst College. So he is a professor, noted professor of economics. And he is, again, to be a senior fellow at the Hoover Institute at Stanford University, you know this guy is highly, 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 highly intelligent, judging from his academic background. But he's not as well known as, Barack Obama. Barack Obama went a different route. He was a Harvard grad. He read at the University of Hawaii, then he became a Harvard grad, and again, was a grassroots. Was a lawyer and then became a grassroots political fundraiser, and then political commentator, and then he got into politics, into the Illinois Senate, and there so on and so forth, and to his rise become the 44th president of the United States. Now, again, so he doesn't have that sort of background that everybody knows about, but let me tell you, within the conservative space, he's one of the leaders, one of the bastions, one of the great men within the space. And again, it needs to be heralded much more within politics and within the political political arguments altogether. Going on to about his education, Sowell has taught economics at Howard University, Rutgers, Cornell, Brandeis University, Amherst College, and the University of California, Los Angeles. At Howard, Sowell wrote was offered the position as head of the economics department, but he declined. Since 1980, he has been senior fellow at Hoover Institution at Stanford University, where he holds a fellowship named after Rhodes and Milton Friedman. One of the preeminent, let me say this, Milton Friedman is one of the preeminent economists, because I studied economics myself. I have a degree in economics myself. And he is one of the preeminent economists of our time, Milton Friedman. And to have a fellowship named after Rhodes and Milton Friedman is a high honor that he holds from 1980, since 1998. The Hoover appointment, because it did not involve in teaching, gave him more time for his numerous writings. In addition, Sowell appeared in several William F. Buckley Jr. shows, Firing Line. That is what he was known for. Spurious. That was what he was known for. William F. Buckley. If you do not know who William F. Buckley is, if you are millennial, zennial, you need to research William F. Buckley. I'm sorry, I'm partial. You need to research William F. Buckley. William F. Buckley he was a conservative commentator. He used to have a show on PBS called Firing Line, and he is one of the more erudite political commentators and political pundits ever, and I mean ever. I think it was a man before his time. I think William F. Buckley would have been a superstar in today's political climate, and God rest his soul. He is one of the heroes within the conservative movement. Sowell has written during which he discussed economics and race. But getting back to it, Thomas Sowell appeared on William F. Buckley's Jr. show Firing Line several times, during which he discussed the economics of race and privatization. Sowell has written that he gradually lost faith in the academic system, citing low academic standards and counterproductive university bureaucracy, and he resolved to leaving teaching after his time at the University of California, Los Angeles. In a personal odyssey, he recounts, I had come to Hanford basically to find reasons to continue teaching. What I found instead there were more reasons to abandon an academic career. So he gave up that and he became a fellow, so he can write prose on his conservative views. And let's go to his writings and teachings and thoughts. Sowell has a nationally syndicated column distributed by Creative Syndicate that was published in Forbes Magazine, National Review, Wall Street Journal, Washington Times, New York Post, and other major newspapers, as well as online on websites such as Real Clear Politics, Town Hall, WorldNet Daily, and the Jewish World Review. Sowell commented on current views, including liberal media bias, judicial activism, organization, originalism, abortion, minimum wage, universal health care, the tension between government and politics, programs and protections of familial autonomy, affirmative action, government bureaucracy, gun control, militancy, U.S. foreign policy, the war on drugs, multiculturalism, mob rule, and the overruling of Roe v. Wade. This man has done, listen, within the conservative space, he is considered one of the godfathers of the conservative movement. And yet he's not known simply because, those political commentators who are black, who tend to be featured, tend to be on the center/left of the political spectrum. And he has his own website, thomassowell.com. He has a YouTube page on which he frequently downloads material to this day, even at 93, still very, very much alive, very, very much within politics. And Sowell has also written a trilogy of books on ideologies and political positions, including A Conflict of Visions, in which he speaks on the origins of political strife, The Vision of the Anointed, in which he compares the conservative libertarian and the liberal progressive worldviews, and The Quest for Cosmic Justice, in which as in many of his other writings, he outlines the thesis of the need felt by intellectuals, politicians, and leaders to fix and perfect the world in utopian and ultimately, he posits, disastrous fashions. Separately from the trilogy, but also in discussion of the subject, he wrote Intellectuals in Society, building on his earlier network, in which he discusses what he argues to be the blind hubris and follies of intellectuals in a variety of areas. So again, he commentates on many issues, and he has caused some controversy simply because he's a black man taking a conservative view, which is seen as a zebra in the political space. But again, it's something that has to be regarded. And he's always known for his suit and tie. He never goes out without a suit and tie, and when discussing his views. And he's seen as an upstanding gent that needs to be further regarded, not only here but around the world. Let me see. His book. I'll just finish this off here. His book, Knowledge and Decisions, a winner of the 1980 Law and Economics Center Prize, was heralded as a landmark work, selected for the prize because of its cogent contribution to our understanding of the differences between the market process and the process of government. In announcing the award, the center acclaimed Sowell, whose contribution to our understanding of the process of regulation alone would make the book important, but in re-emphasizing the diversity and efficiency that the market makes possible, this work goes deeper and becomes even more significant. Friedrich Hayek wrote, in a wholly original manner, Sowell succeeds in translating abstract and theoretical arguments into highly concrete and realistic discussion of the central problems of contemporary economic policy. This guy is a noted economic scholar and a conservative political speaker, and the world should have more knowledge of Thomas Sowell, in my estimation. And my dad was forever right. That we can get into race and ethnicity in a bit as we go through this here, and his views on Donald Trump and politics and such, and Barack Obama, which we will get into, because that is the juiciest subject of all, quite simply. But let's get into it. Let's get into it right now. We're gonna I've taken from Thomas Sowell's own YouTube page on this. Black culture keeps blacks down. Right. Well, I've said this in passing, but I haven't really featured it here. But I think it should be featured quite simply here on Talk Live. So I'm going to get into it. This is part of the Wall Street Journal's interview with Thomas Sowell. But this is featured on Thomas Sowell's YouTube page. And please subscribe to Thomas Sowell's YouTube page. It's worth a listen. It's worth, and he's a man who deserves much more politics than he already receives. But since he's conservative, he's considered part of the back pages when, in fact, he should be a front page political commentator, quite simply. And let's get into this. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live. I'm done talking. I'll let Thomas Sowell speak on Black Culture Keeps Blacks Down. This is why. Let's go.
Battery 70%.
There's no gangster rap that was pervasively available in Germany. I mean, the average of black kid today, I think, is probably better off, certainly materially, than, say, Ben Carson was when he was growing up.
Ben Carson, the famous black surgeon at Johns Hopkins.
Right.
Who is immensely accomplished in every way.
Yes.
Right.
And was the I believe the Secretary of Health under the not the Obama administration, the Trump administration. But he didn't exactly coat himself in glory in that position. But he's a highly intelligent individual, Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson, orthopedic surgeon, and it's I don't think the political life was for him. I think if he stayed in a medical background, I think he'd be considered one of the geniuses within the orthopedic surgeon space. But again, politics makes fools of us all sometimes, and yeah, it definitely made a fool of Dr. Ben Carson. But nonetheless, he is one to be heralded within the as one of the geniuses within medicine. Let's go.
I would say that certainly the black kids who are growing up today have a higher material standard of living than I had. The difference was that the schools were good when I came along. They were especially good in New York at that time, hard as that is to believe. But the kids who grew up in that same place where I lived, they will not get that same education. Now that can be blamed on somebody, but it has very little to do with what happened 100 or 200 years ago. And it's true in other countries. I mean, in Nigeria, for example, there's a tribe, the Igbos, who are living in one of the least fertile parts of Nigeria, who were in fact enslaved in centuries past by other tribes and so on. When the British moved in and set up schools, the Igbos went for the schools. By the time Nigeria became independent, the Igbos had climbed above the other groups that had been ahead of them to begin with. But there are all kinds of cross currents of factors, the particular culture, or the particular geography. You run through the whole list of them.
You cite in Intellectuals and Race, you cite an observation by the intelligence expert, IQ scientist James Flynn, that just stopped me cold. Mm. After the Second World War, you've got large numbers of American troops remaining in Germany. For that matter, there's still several tens of thousands there today. And both black and white American soldiers had children with German women. Mm. And Flynn discovered that those children growing up in Germany showed no IQ differences at all. Mm. The black kids and the white kids, the same. Quoting Intellectuals and Race, Professor Flynn concluded that the reason was that the offspring of black soldiers in Germany, and now you're quoting Professor Flynn, grew up in a nation with no black subculture, close quote. Which means what? Which means they experienced exactly the same expectations. Is this the...
No, the expectations are external. The culture in which they grew up was not the culture in which black kids grew up in America today.
So they had...
There's no gangster rap that was pervasively available in Germany.
So here's what I'm getting. There is something about black subculture in America today that holds African Americans themselves back?
Yes. In fact, I went into this in a previous book, which about black rednecks and white liberals, because that same subculture.
Let's talk about two of your books here. Go ahead.
Because that very same subculture held whites in the South back as well. That in the time this mental testing in the First World War turned up, among other things, the fact that whites from various 4 or 5 southern states scored lower on the mental test than blacks from 4 or 5 northern states. And so it really was a question of the subculture that was there, which was a handicap to both.
All right. And so whose job is it to say, wrong subculture, folks, you're harming yourselves?
Well, I would think in an ideal world that intellectuals might take on that task, but the world that we live in, I've noticed, is not ideal.
All right.
There it is, my people. Wow. A huge take on how black subculture, including gangster rap and all of its well, derivatives, and rap in general, have really held blacks, black diaspora back in certain ways and forms within the Western world. And he uses the example of when mixed race children were born in Germany, they did just as well as homogeneous and original German and native German children in Germany, post-war Germany, because there was no black subculture. There's something to be said about that. I think, let's face facts. I love rap music. I love hip hop. I was a child of hip hop, and to be fair and frank, it is the reason. It has its positives and negatives. The positives are that hip hop is the voice of a generation. Is a voice of two or three. A voice of, I would say, 2 and 3 generations, from I say Gen X to Gen Z, including millennials, and it has been the voice of a generation, black, white, Jewish and Gentile, Protestant and Catholic, from around the world for the last 30 to 40 years. And that is to be commended from a group, from a culture that literally started in the streets of New York. Shout out Cool Herc. However, if taken in massive doses, and if not taking the intelligence away, and taking the intelligence away from hip hop music and the hip hop soul culture, one finds that there is an ignorance based within hip hop music, unfortunately, and this ignorance holds a certain segment of the African diaspora back. Those being poor, and those being impoverished, because they have the most to gain from it, and also they extract the lowest common denominational essence of it, and that's where you get gangster rap, and that's where you get. That's where you get the perils and the ills of trap music today, and really, and all of its derivatives as well, and it's sad. Although I enjoy the music, I listen to the music, I love the music. The fact of the matter is, there's a cause and effect. There are its positives and its negatives. The negatives are that if you take it for what it is this very successful genre of music. The bad part is, if you take it to a negative state, if you dumb it down too much, you tend to dumb down the community of which births it, and you tend to get the ills of 5-year-olds twerking in ballet class, or having wanting to have your coochie scratched in just outside Buckingham Palace, or literally making an ass of yourself in higher society. And the fact of the matter is, it's like everybody's drawn to the subculture, but if you take it in all its forms, chances are you can be a victim of it. You can be dumbed down by it, and you can be susceptible to its segments of lack of intelligence. Not to say that hip hop doesn't have intelligent forms, because there are. However, a lot of people take the negativity out of it, the sexualization of it, the misogynization of it, the violence of it, the trap. The trap lore of it, and take it too far, and it has resulted in a nasty, brutish, deathly form of music that when it first began was very uplifting. So I still have hope for hip hop, but I understand where it comes from on hip hop. Let's continue.
What is to be done? Take a look at President Lyndon Johnson speaking at Howard University in 1965.
But freedom is not enough. You do not wipe away the scars of centuries by saying now, you are free to go where you want and do as you desire and choose the leaders you please. You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bring him up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others. and still justly believe that you have been completely fair.
It's pathetic. It's not a question of, there's no you who has the control to be completely fair or completely unfair. I mean, the circumstances are. So someone once criticized the mental test on grounds that the tests were unfair, and I think it was David Reisman who said the tests are not unfair. Life is unfair, and the tests are measuring the results. But who has control of life? Who has control of the past? Who has control of the culture that people have in the present, which they've inherited from the past?
So Lyndon Johnson, he's, in fact, although good liberal that he was, at least in regard, Lyndon Johnson had a complicated career and changed positions on issues many times. But good liberal though he was at that moment, he was in fact engaging in a breathtaking arrogance.
Yes.
On two counts. One, that white people were the ones who were responsible for where black people stood in the race, that it was up to whites entirely. That blacks, as he described, I put
devastating.
the black people are passive; they're acted upon.
That's right. That's right.
And then the second act of arrogance is the supposition that somehow the federal government could fix it.
Yes, it is staggering. But if you wanted to be charitable, you could say, well, he said this in 1965. But if you say, all right, why are people now repeating it in 2013 when we've had nearly half a century of experience to the contrary? And if you look within the black community, those blacks who had escaped what I call the black redneck culture, they've moved on. So, but it's the culture the different parts of the black community had. They were different.
Daniel Patrick Moynihan, in his famous 1965 report entitled "The Negro Family: The Case for National Action," close quote. Longish quotation, but it gets to something, I believe. Moynihan: the fundamental problem is that of family structure. The Negro family in the urban ghettos is crumbling. A middle class has managed to save itself, but for vast numbers of the unskilled and poorly educated, the fabric of conventional social relationships has all but disintegrated. So long as this situation persists, the cycle of poverty and disadvantage will continue to repeat itself. Close quote. When Moynihan wrote those words, the illegitimacy rate among African Americans was 25%. Today, the illegitimacy rate among white Americans is 36%. Among Hispanics, more than 50%. And among African Americans, more than 70%.
Yeah.
Aside from throwing up your hands in despair, what is to be done?
Before we get into what can be done, let's break those numbers down. The illegitimacy rate, ladies and gentlemen, is the rate of single parenthood within the black community. That's what it comes down to, the illegitimacy rate. Meaning that there's single parent homes, be it single mothers or single fathers. And what Mr. Moynihan was saying, that within the black impoverished communities, black illegitimacy rates would only continue if this sort of negative black culture tended to continue within the black ghettos of America. And that was said in 1963. Now, again, this was during a time during Jim Crow and just after Jim Crow, and we were just getting African Americans were just getting the civil rights movement. They were just starting to move forward. They're just starting to consider themselves free. They just got the equal rights vote, and were able to vote as legitimate citizens. And they said through no doubt government handling of the situation, where blacks used to be very, very independent, even during Jim Crow, even during segregation. black illegitimacy rates were held at 25%. As of I would say, what did he say? Within the early 2000s, that rose to 80%. That rose to 75%, which is ridiculous. That is a hugely ridiculous number, and it's simply because people, especially single parent homes, especially single mothers, unfortunately, instead of choosing their men and keeping men within the household, they chose government subsidies, and this proliferated the breaking of black families and continued impoverishment and illegitimacy rates within black society, unfortunately, and they're at the highest rates within the United States, and it is continued to this day from 1960. It is steadily increased to this day from 1925 to 2013. And if you want to see it, you can also take a look at getbackdemographics.com. Let's go here. Let's go to economics. Let's go to employment. Let's see, households, income, poverty. Here we go. You can look it for yourself at blackdemographics.com. And you can see how black families in poverty have only fallen even after Barack Obama into the Trump era, and it's now at about 18.5%. The Great Recession of 2008 caused an increase in poverty rate among African American families from its lowest point in 2008 to over 24% in just 4 years. Black poverty rates lowered after 2012 after the Obama administration, and continued to improve during the beginning of the Trump administration. So this is a problem that's continued to plague us to this day. The percentage of black families in poverty are with children under the age of 18 have gone up to 26%. Female with no spouse up to 39% with children under the age of 18. Compared to all Americans, blacks are under the age of 18 are at 32%, which is larger than many other groups, has already been highlighted in this film. And you can see it here on blackdemographic.com, and you can see for yourself, black families in poverty. Look it up for yourself, guys. This is from the U.S. Census. So again, these are black statistics by black people for black people. So we have a problem here. We have a huge issue that continues to be provided in society in and of itself. Let's continue here with Dr. Sowell.
The first thing to be done is to understand that this was a result of policies begun in the 1960s. This is not a legacy of what happened 100 years before the 1960s.
The breakdown of the black family is not a legacy of slavery.
No. If you the classic study of this goes all the way back to the era of slavery, and they find that most black kids, even under slavery, had lived with two parents, and that was true all the way up until the 1960s. And so, if you really want to find out what has happened, it's changed. It has changed since the 1960s. And the fact that whites now have a higher rate of illegitimacy than blacks had when Moynihan wrote suggests that this is something that spreads out. But if you look at something else, if you look at those blacks, and look at black husband-wife families, the poverty rate among such families has been in single digits every year since 1994. And so if you look at the external causes, why the husband-wife families and the welfare single mom families all are facing the same society and objective things, but the results are radically different because the cultures and values are different.
So you would roll back welfare. I guess that's the principal policy. So what would Tom Sowell do? One, you'd eliminate welfare, you'd reform welfare. What would you do?
Roll it back.
All right. And what about affirmative action?
Eliminate it.
Just gone.
Yeah.
Colorblind policy completely. All right.
Very, very strong views, as he said. Take away welfare and roll back affirmative action. But his argument is this. When you do such things, it forces the black community to perform. And perform at a higher level, or else it forces you to swim or die, basically. It takes away any sort of raft of inadequacy and any sort of excuses or complacency within the black community, and forces those within the black community to, number one, get married, number two, work hard, because there is no safety net. Now, again, that is a bit hard to hear for a lot of those who have been used to the welfare state, and those who hear things from the left side of the aisle. But unfortunately, this is revolutionary and can be considered, to be fair, because again, I think within a welfare state, the people have become lazy, complacent, and to a certain point, though needing the help, have made them addicted to it. They consider it a drug. It's considered a drug, quite simply, and it is and as I've already quoted here with regards to the McCarthy years, the American economic study of 1968, when given the choice between government benefits and a man in the home, women chose government benefits over a man in the home because they wanted to be independent of their men. It led to the downfall within the black community and more of an impoverished state within it. And, I think what Thomas Sowell had to say needs to be thought of quite deeply. It has to be thought of quite deeply, I think. When there is a burden of performance placed upon you and there is no safety net left available to you, now again, a safety net put in the proper place like universal health care, which helps all, I think is a good thing. But when it helps a certain minority through welfare, it forces those who are within it to stay lazy. And you've seen, and people, you have examples within your own families, time and time again, where you have literally had an individual or a group or a family who have fallen victim to the welfare state and who have not sorry about that, I was just distracted there, and who have not really taken it upon themselves to get out of it because it's free money. So it gives you a disincentive to work. Even though there is a stigma attached to it, there's still that disincentive is enticing to many, and some will take it as a cue to get up and work and be productive, or some will just simply lie there and take whatever benefits are available, and will be victims of the system, quite simply. And Thomas has a point with regards to taking away welfare, taking away affirmative action, because it forces us all to work hard and to do what's necessary. Because again, many other races have not taken on see it as a source of embarrassment to take on welfare and to take on any sort of public assistance, because it's a defeatist attitude. And such ideas from Thomas Sowell needs to be highly regarded, especially within the black community right now, because again, we are at the bottom. And things need to be improved. So his viewpoints need to be taken into account, quite simply. Let's continue.
What prospect for that do you see?
None.
No black leader of any standing. I'm talking about a political leader as opposed to an intellectual such as yourself. You've got, there's you, there's Walter Williams. Do you get the sense that there's a growing generation, a rising generation of African American intellectuals who say enough of this, I'm with Tom Sowell?
Well, I don't know if they'll go that far. There's no point.
That would be asking a lot.
There's no point being reckless. But I think.
There you go. I mean, just to say, just before he gets into this commentary, let me say this again, people. Thomas Sowell is an island. He really is an island within the political spectrum. He really is on the right, not the radical right. He's not where is it? Clarence Bigham's from Dave Chappelle, and the Black Ku Klux Klan member. He's not there, but he is a black conservative. And black conservatives are few and far between. They are the unicorns of the political spectrum. But there are more and more coming to the fore, as especially with Trump and his political campaigns and his presidency have brought forward a lot more black conservatives who are now within the political sphere, who are now announcing themselves to the world. But yeah, listen, Thomas Sowell is an island. Thomas Sowell is the granddaddy of the black conservative movement. He's 93 years old, people, and still offering commentary like this to this day. He's still a sharpest attack, and he is someone that needs to be recognized as as that counterbalance of black political views that needs to be heard. He needs to be heard, people. I gotta say it. He needs to be heard. You need to get to know Thomas Sowell. I say it again. My dad had a quote from Thomas Sowell within his office. I swear, if I hope I damn near should have got it down when I had the chance. But anyways, he had a quote from Thomas Sowell that he hang prominently in his office, which I do regret at this moment. However, he is a man, and my dad is a man who raised himself, by each other's bootstraps, who came up in the last truly racist decade that we know, which is the 1980s, and built himself a $1 million business through blood, sweat, and tears, and quite simply made a better life for his children and his grandchildren, and was an example to many within his family, both on my mother and father's side. So for him to have that sort of mindset, it needs to be congratulated, quite simply. He needs to be further heralded. Now, again, there is room for the Barack Obamas and the Adam Clayton Powells and the et al. And within the black political space and black political sphere, and that's all well and good. But a man like Thomas Sowell he's remained in the shadows, and that needs to end. And I think that's coming to an end with blacks starting to take on more conservative viewpoints. Let's let him finish up.
Shelby Steele and many others, Larry Elder, you run through a long list. And there are more such people now than there were, say, in the 1970s. But in terms of political leaders, all the incentives politically are for black leaders to blame all problems in the black community on the larger society. And that enables them to take on the role of being the defender of the black community against enemies, which in turn creates a situation in which many blacks don't feel that anything that they do is going to help themselves unless it's done politically as a group. That there's no point. I mean, why would you, if you believe what they say, why would you want to knock yourself out in the school knowing that the man is not going to let you get anywhere? One of the most pathetic things I heard in recent years was a young black man saying that, at one point he thought he would join the Air Force and become a pilot. And then he says he realized that the white man is not going to let a black man become a pilot. And he was saying this decades after the Tennessee Airmen had established their reputation in combat in Europe. But the hopelessness is one of the big products of the race industry. That you have no chance. I remember giving a talk at Marquette, and at the end of the talk, among the questions that was asked, a young black man got up and he said, "Even though I am graduating from Marquette University, what hope is there for me?" And having gone through college when I was in the 50s, I don't remember any blacks saying that in the 1950s, when there was a lot more obstacles to overcome than there were when this guy is graduating from Marquette. But you have to produce that kind of feeling in order to serve the interests of those in the race industry.
Final question then. Maybe we can think in terms of that young man at Marquette. Or let's put it this way. Somewhere watching this interview, there's a young Thomas Sowell. There's an African American who's smart and wants to do something with his life. It seems to me we've already got one piece of advice you'd offer to him is stay away from the racist industry. Stay away from the what advice race hustlers. What advice would you give a young Thomas Sowell? How do you make something of yourself as an African American in America today?
The way anybody else would. You equip yourself with skills that people are willing to pay for.
Wow. Again, words of the wise Thomas Sowell. Absolutely brilliant. Indeed. He's absolutely right. Equip yourself with the skills that people will pay for. Simple enough. And that should keep you within a middle class, if not upper middle class background for years to come. And it's true. It's true. If your skills are in demand by the community, you will never go broke. There is always hope for you. Perfect example. Simple enough. And I would add to that more black families and not less black families are needed, because everybody has that cue. And I've highlighted this on Talk Live for ages. Black people need to get married. It is the key to generational wealth. If you think that the government roles have something for you and will free you from any sort of impoverishment and allow you a good standard of living, you are fooling yourselves. You are absolutely fooling yourselves. Black people, more than any other, need to find marriage wherever it may be. More often, better with each other than not, but even if it's not, so be it. The black middle class is only increased if black marriages are indeed at the forefront of the community. It gets us out of poverty. It gets us out of extremely generational impoverishment. Gets us out of any sort of... It gets us on the property ladder. It gets us having babies, continuing the race, and raising our standard of living. I cannot stress that enough. We need more black families. Goodness gracious. To be single, to be independent, and not need a man these days is silly, ladies. Absolutely silly. It is a recipe for disaster. A recipe for disaster. Especially in the black community. An absolutely huge recipe for disaster. For you to choose government subsidies over your black men who, might I add, are increasing their stakes within, as black women are, but black men definitely are. And it's been featured here on Talk Live on many an occasion. If black men are increasing their social standing, if other women from other races are seeing black men as eligible fathers and husbands, shouldn't you as well? Shouldn't you as well? And we've already gone to how, black culture, black subculture has gone into this. Those who are just joining us, quite simply, there's a good and a bad. There's a yin and a yang, yes. I'm still one who loves hip-hop culture, and I will say that to my dying day. However, there are subgenres in it that hold us back. Yes, I'll concede that point as well. I will concede that point as well. A shout out to the people who are out there today. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live. Let's continue this. Let's continue this as we go into, yes, Thomas Sowell and the Real Danger. Let me see what. Let me just make sure that we are indeed in good time, in good standing. Well, yeah. Well, let's continue. Let's continue as far as we can, anyways. I wanted to keep this to an hour, but if we go to an hour and a half, so be it. That's fine. But we're gonna get into Thomas Sowell and Thomas Sowell to 11 on America, Real Danger. So this comes from Fox News. Not exactly the greatest fan of Fox News, but again, they have certain things to say. Let me say that. So, especially from the conservative, from the conservative views of conservative fan base, that needs to be listened to from time to time. And in this case, yes, I will listen. I will listen to Thomas Sowell. So let's just get into this right now. It's his interview with. It's Thomas Sowell's interview with Lebanon America today, and the real dangers on in America. Let's get into it.
Saturday, and we had one of my great heroes, the great Thomas Sowell. Most of you know who Thomas Sowell is. He wrote columns for decades. He's written fantastic books. He's been a leader in the liberty movement for at least half a century, as far as I'm concerned. And he's been warning the American people of tyranny, what tyranny looks like, creeping tyranny, aggressive tyranny. And from my perspective, we're sitting dab in the middle of it. And he's got this fantastic new book out, Social Justice Fallacies by Thomas Sowell. You can get it at Amazon.com or any major.
Now, again, this is a 2024 book. So this is his latest book, Social Justice Fallacies. And, yeah, it's available right now on ThomasSowell.com because this interview happened, I think it's just about a week back, just to remind myself of those. Oh, it's 6 months. Okay, so it's 2023. This is a 2023 book, so it's probably his newest prose, so let's get into it.
Bookstore. It is a fantastic book, and I want to welcome you, Dr. Sowell, and let me just say this to you.
I'm sorry, I'm drinking a lot right now, but I just came from the gym. A lot of cardio.
I was a little kid, not the day.
I am thirsty. Let's go.
And you had an enormous impact on my life. In fact, you've had an enormous impact on the way I do this program. I remember you on with Bo Buckley and Firing Line, and you were a killer debater. Absolutely unbelievable. All that said, let me start it this way. Social justice fallacies. You started out as a Marxist, as many young people do in colleges and universities, and it didn't take long for you to realize, wait a minute, this isn't all that it's cooked up to be. Was this social justice stuff and this inequality stuff, these terms, these ambiguities, did that have an impact on you first being a Marxist and then realizing, wait a minute, this is all BS?
Yes, it did. And I think there's a very simple explanation that as of the time I became a Marxist, I didn't know as much as I knew after several years of study and observing things going on. And as facts carried a lot of weight with me, and when the facts kept going the wrong way, I realized that this was not going to do what it claimed it was going to do. One of the big problems about the social justice field is that what they say sounds so good. It's only after you study history that you find out just how bad, how horribly it actually turned out.
Well, these phrases are very nebulous. Social justice. What does that mean? Basically, if you agree with the Marxists and the leftists, then you support social justice. But on the other hand, if you support individuality and capitalism and private property rights, obviously you're anti-social justice. What does all this mean?
Well, that's how they look at it. They seem to assume a world in which if things don't turn out the same for everybody, that means that somebody has done somebody wrong. And that's an incredible assumption that human beings have such enormous control over their own fates individually or collectively. I mean,
do remember, this man is 92 years old. Okay? He's 92. Speaking with such eloquence and intelligence, wit, charm, focus. He's 92 years old. still a senior fellow at the Hoover Institute at Stanford University. Listen good, guys.
When I think back over my life, and I'm sure other people can do the same in their lives, there are times that a particular person appeared on the scene and changed the whole trajectory of my life. And it's happened more than once, and I'm sure it's happened in the lives of many other people. There's nobody out there who has all the incredible amount of knowledge required to take over making other people's decisions for them.
Do you find that these radicals, these autocrats, basically, this term social justice, do they really mean centralized government, redistribution of wealth, a permanent government that undermines representative government? Isn't this really the nomenclature for that?
It is, and if you realize what enormously high opinions many of the intellectual elites have of themselves, you can see that what it boils down to is very intellectual people like themselves just simply preempting the decisions of other people in every aspect of their lives. One of the things that is astonishing to me now is that we're having this big debate about sex education in the schools. And to me, the question is, what qualifies the people who are pushing this stuff to take over the roles of parents? What's also very troubling is that this all came out during the COVID pandemic, when students were studying at home and the parents got to see what was being taught in the schools. Now, it so happens that 30 years ago, I wrote a book called Inside American Education, in which all of this was laid out just exactly as it's happening now. The fraudulence of it, the appearance that this is responding to what the students want. I can't imagine how many young people in the elementary schools especially are saying that they are a boy but they want to be a girl, or they're a girl and want to be a boy.
Listen close.
I can't think of anybody in my whole lifetime who is saying things like that. And if you follow the sort of institutional way these things are done, there are groups outside the school system and inside the school system who want to do this, and who know that the parents don't want them to do it, and they do it anyway, and they pretend that they're responding to what the students want. They're not. Once I was at a meeting of educators, and while I was there was a man who was going around the country selling a particular brainwashing program, and he showed me his schedule, and he was scheduled, my gosh, for every 2 or 3 days for months to be pushing this stuff in all the schools. And he mistook me as if he thought I was a school official, and he was regaling me with all of this. It's clear this is not a spontaneous thing. This is organized, and the tactics used are the tactics that were developed for brainwashing in communist countries.
The book is...
Ladies and gentlemen, if that is not a sobering viewpoint on how the Alphabet Gang, the Pink Mafia, is being lured into all school systems, and the curriculum's being taken over by a group that only results in 6% of the population. I'm not trying to be in any way against the LGBTQ2+ community, but there is an indoctrination going on in the public school, not particularly the Catholic school, but definitely the public school system, and definitely in colleges and universities throughout the Western world. It goes without saying. They want to have more of a gay / lesbian / transsexual / bisexual, LGBTQ, queer society. It goes without saying. they say Gen Zs have the greatest proportion. It is the gayest generation of all time. They say about nearly a third of all Gen Zs consider themselves part of the LGBTQ community. For the most part, they're women. For the most part, consider themselves bisexual. Yes, it's happening in real time. When a government is letting you change your gender for free, believe me, it's happening in real time. When parents aren't informed of a curriculum where LGBTQ views are featured and in which the LGBTQ community have gone on record to say that they are in the indoctrination business. There's a problem. And Thomas Sowell called that 30 years previous. He found it akin to communist indoctrination on the political landscape there in China and in Russia. The facts can't be denied, people. We're in an age where transvestites are trying to lure cis-gendered males and say there's nothing wrong in having sex with a transvestite or starting a relationship with a transvestite, or saying that children can be had by transvestites, those who grew up as males before their change in gender. We are living in serious times, people. We're living in serious times. It's imperative on parents to wake up to the idea that your children are being indoctrinated in front of your eyes, and if you do not get a handle on this, it's only going to get worse. It will only get worse, unfortunately. Not to say that the LGBTQ community are not allowed to do as they wish and want to do. However, when a child who knows nothing of any sexual orientation is being indoctrinated to take on a LGBTQ lifestyle, that is where you draw the line. Let's continue.
Is Social Justice Fallacies by Dr. Thomas Sowell. And in fact, Dr. Sowell, critical race theory, the 1619 Project, these are really anti-knowledge, aren't they? They're really propaganda devices for the hard left that are being, pushed in our classrooms, pushed in our society, and so forth. These attacks on the American system, do they promote equality? Do they promote unity? Do they promote a melting pot society, or are they intended to destroy this culture?
Clearly, it's the latter. And also, when you said it's not just propaganda, it is propaganda that overtly prevents other views from being heard. If they were just propagandizing, but the students were allowed to learn other things as well, different ways of looking at life, that's one thing. But anyone who, for example, there are people who've taught academic courses on racial and ethnic issues at Harvard and other places who just simply stopped teaching their courses because if they were saying anything that was different from what the propagandists were saying, you would have violence on the campus and so on, and the university administrators would not protect their classes. So they just stopped doing it. One of the great scholars in this area, the late Stephen Thernstrom, simply stopped teaching his course because you had ignorance silencing knowledge.
Ignorance silencing knowledge. and you write an entire section on knowledge. You break it down into different subsections.
Before he gets into the knowledge segment, I mean, critical race theory. This is something that I wrestle with in terms of if it is needed or unnecessary within a school curriculum. It's tough. It's really, really tough because, again, I think that there's something to be learned from critical race theory, but I get his point that to put one race ahead of all others in terms of an education, even though that race did build a American society, really, it beggars debate, and it's needed to be thought of much further. And if there is an elective course on critical race theory, I think that would be the happy medium, rather than a compulsory one. I think that's the happy medium. But that elective course should be available to students who want to take it, and it shouldn't. And the idea of critical race theory shouldn't be eliminated completely. However, to be considered compulsory, I get his point in terms of it be considered a compulsory education for all students within a school. However, since this was a race that helped build a nation, which was considered the strongest of all nations of all time, quite simply, an education on them should be had. But again, that is what I wrestle with in terms of with Dr. Sowell. So I'm not exactly with him on that viewpoint, but I understand his point. Let's continue.
Let me ask you this. I don't even know if you watch news these days, but you're talking about what goes on in the classroom. Are we really a nation that's about knowledge now? Or are we a nation that's about substituting the language of the hard left for real words, substituting the thought process of people who really seek to find, quote unquote, the truth with ideology? What have we become on the whole? I mean, when I watch the news, all I hear is propaganda, surface level BS.
Well, yes, and that's the norm, unfortunately, in academic institutions, even the most prestigious. The entire Ivy League is in that same mode. That people who it scares me because you have people like, say, Heather McDonald or Charles Murray will come on a campus, and they do so at physical risk to themselves, and again the authorities do nothing. I've been, of course, I don't normally go to those things anyway, but I've been in some of them where they had the police all around, the doors all locked, and people outside banging on the windows and doors just to disrupt the talk that's going on inside. I remember back in 1969. This has been going on a long time. It's so sad that it's taken us so long to become aware of it. 1969, students at Harvard went into the administration building, seized it, went into the personnel records, and were passing out all the personal information for the faculty and other things to the media and so on. The president of Harvard called in the police. The Harvard faculty gave a vote of no confidence to the president. He resigned. And I think after that, other presidents decided that the way is to get along is have preemptive surrender. And that's been really developed into an art.
You've been studying.
That's something that needs to be said about, a lot, college and university campuses throughout the world, throughout the Western world, are seen as leftist think tanks. And where a lot of, leftist views in terms of the LGBTQ community, in terms of critical race theory, in terms of liberal ideals, tend to find favor on college and university campuses. college and university campuses throughout the Western world tend not to be conservative in its viewpoints. Now, certain Ivy League schools may be that is the case, but as stated here by Mr. Sowell, Dr. Sowell, he even says that even at Harvard, once there is once the left has really got it within them to take over a school or to have its say and sway and ride on certain campuses, that it definitely can hold a campus hostage. And unfortunately, that is the case in most college campuses, most areas of higher learning throughout the world. They tend to be more leftist in its thinking than conservative. To be fair, definitely more conservative than liberal. Definitely more left than right ring in its outlook. Now, is it a good thing or bad thing? Well, it can be bad if conservative views aren't allowed a space in which they can speak amongst themselves and given the right to to congregate and have their views pointed out in public. You've seen these things on TikTok where Candace Owens or many conservative speakers are decried when they head onto a university or a college campus, because again they see and it's very strident in their views in terms of eliminating such conservative voices, and it can be embarrassing at times, quite simply. And unfortunately, I don't see it changing for a good long time, especially with the alphabet gang agenda at the forefront, and especially with critical race theory at such an all-time high, especially with Black Lives Matter. But that's a whole other thing. But again, it has its good points and its bad points. In that it's quite a quagmire when it steps into racial equality relations. But definitely with regards to LGBTQ community, yes, that is a place which is try to eliminate a conservative viewpoint, and it gets quite embarrassing at times, and quite simply, shocking to say the least. But again, such ideals were used by Nazi Germany themselves in terms of putting forth their point. But the LGBTQ community, the alphabet gang, won't say that they are borrowing from the same playbook. Let's continue.
Our country for a very long time. The history, economics, philosophy, covered the whole horizon. 40 years ago, 50 years ago, today. Is the country in a better position today than it was half a century ago, or is it in a worse position today?
Oh, much worse, much worse. The silencing of the other side has now become much more prominent. And the real danger is not in the silly ideas that are being promoted. It's in the fact that nobody else is allowed to reply to them without some danger to themselves.
Again, as we've already stated on college campuses, the left doesn't want the left, including the LGBTQ community, do not want to hear from the right. They want them off college campuses. They want them. They don't want any conservative talking voices on campuses. Period. And it's a shame because there is no discourse. There is no discourse of such views, and a conservative viewpoint is decried and considered, quite simply, an admonishment. Well, not admonishment, an abomination. That's the word I was trying to find. An abomination, and decried all college campuses, and that's a shame. That's an absolute shame. There is no sort of discourse, and as Thomas Sowell said himself, it's not gotten better; it's gotten worse. And it's a shame that conservative viewpoints are basically shunted to the left and shunted off of college campuses and decried when any sort of conservative speakers are introduced on college campuses. Period, because they don't people don't want to hear them. They're protests in front of them, and it's very, very much like racist policies in the past. Anyways, let's continue.
Do you see in this country a growing police state? I don't necessarily mean a police state like you'll see in these aggressive fascist or Marxist regimes, but sort of slowly but surely, like you're talking about controlling the language, which controls thought and activity. This massive censorship that judges have now ruled on this administration. You can see the politicization of the Department of Justice and so forth. But let me put it to you this way, a more fine point. Are we a free country today? I remember Mises once saying that Americans talk like Marxists. Are we a free country today, or are we a country on the precipice of losing our freedom?
I think the latter. It's hard for me to see just how we're going to come out of this, especially when people who are so willing to increase the powers of government don't seem to understand that it doesn't matter for what purpose you gave them that power, which may have been good purposes. Once they have that power, they can use it for whatever they want. The Federal Reserve System was set up, for example, to prevent runaway inflation or runaway deflation or bank failures. And the intellectuals were 100% behind that. But the cold fact is that there's been more deflation, as in during the Great Depression, and more inflation for decades on end, and more bank failures than ever occurred prior to the setting up of the Federal Reserve System. But the Federal Reserve System, for example, can force people to do things they don't want to do just because they have the power to hold up what their decisions are. And so the power created for one purpose is then used for some different purpose. When FDR took the United States off the gold standard, he used the law passed during the First World War to prevent trading with enemy nations. But once the power was there, you could use it for anything you wanted to.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey,
I'll stop it there. Thank you very much to Thomas Sowell and his viewpoint on the American Republic and how it is getting worse, not better. And do I have a disagree with him? Not really. Not really so. But again, I think tomorrow night. Let me just feature this here and out. Yes. Tomorrow night, I'm going to stop that there. Tomorrow night, we're going to go into a further chat about things. Just a second, as we stop this piece here. There we go. Fantastic. But thank you very much to Fox News. Again, not exactly a fan, but again, they've done worse. And they brought in such an emissary such as Dr. Thomas Sowell to discuss his views. So let's just bring it back to myself. I think what we're going to do is we're going to stop it right here. And we're getting to the more sensational portion of the show tomorrow. We'll go to full cam. The more sensational show tomorrow, which is, again, the Barack Obama sequence of things. And quite simply, why Thomas Sowell thinks that Barack Obama is the worst American president of all time. Yeah. That deserves its own show in itself. So we're going to finish that tomorrow night in Sock Talk Live, include other viewpoints from Thomas Sowell, but that will be our feature topic. Thomas Sowell on why Barack Obama is the worst president of all time. Again, from black conservative to black, I would say centrist, liberal centrist. I would say is Barack Obama tend to have certain conservative views on things and certain liberal views on things. But again, that is to be debated. But we're going to feature that tomorrow night on Talk Live on how Thomas Sowell sees Barack Obama as the worst president of all time. But thank you very much for joining me. I thought that was a very great primer into the viewpoint of Thomas Sowell. And again, I don't see much wrong in what he has to say. There are certain things that I disagree with, especially with regard to critical race theory, especially with regards to hip hop subculture being all bad, which But there are certain views that I can agree with, especially when it comes regarding the LGBTQ indoctrination of school children, and also black poverty and how it's linked to public assistance, and how affirmative action, and also black programs should be eliminated in order for the upliftment of the black community, because again, I think we are much better suited towards the world by not having them there, because again, during the ages of Jim Crow, during the age of segregation, black people thrive. Black Wall Streets thrived throughout the United States, and it is through their pull their own bootstraps method that allowed that to happen. But again, we went away from that. We depended on the government too much, and quite simply, it lowered our standards within our own community, especially within the African diaspora. So it's something that should be had, especially that German mixed race child a viewpoint that was offered earlier in the show. But thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live. We're going to continue this tomorrow night with Thomas Sowell on his feelings of Barack Obama and how he feels he's the worst president in American history. I have got to see this, and I know you should too. So tune in tomorrow for Talk Live. We're going to get into that. And thank you very much for joining me tonight. And looking forward to discussing Thomas Sowell again, part 2 of Thomas Sowell tomorrow night at Talk Live. And I thank you very much for joining me. I thank you very much for all because I've been walking around and people have, there are 2 or 3 people mentioning my TikTok and YouTube and Instagram shouts and wishing me well and giving me kudos for what I'm doing here. And I thank you very much for the support. I thank you very much for the support on TikTok. TikTok is starting to take off. It really, really is, especially when I have certain key and buzzwords that are happening. But again, it's only going to get better, people. I'm not going to stop. It's all about compound interest and your support. So like and subscribe and comment to Talk Live, people. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And as always, we're sponsored by Duntalk, DUNTALK.com. Like, subscribe, comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Thomas Sowell v. Barack Hussein Obama. And his take on how he is the worst president in American history. Woo! It's going to be saucy, people. You got to be here for that. And I'm looking forward to that with a passion. So thank you very much for joining me at Talk Live. We're going to leave it here. And I thank you for all that you've done here. Wow, I didn't know they had him there as well. Nonetheless, enjoy your evening. I'm going to fuel up and do some reading. So again, thank you very much for joining me, and look forward to speaking to you tomorrow night. And good night from Toronto. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live. Again, let me check that is in the books. Yes, it is. And we will speak to you guys tomorrow night on Thomas Sowell v. Barack Obama. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and I